I would like to thank the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment, one of our longtime partners on international investment agreements related work, for inviting UNCTAD to participate in this course. I particularly thank you for accepting my contribution via video. In the next few minutes, I will highlight some of the recent trends in international investment agreements and investor-state dispute settlement, as well as the challenges the IIA system is facing today. I will also present to you some of the key policy tools developed by UNCTAD. These are tools that you, as IIA negotiators and as investment policymakers, can use to make your country's international investment agreements work better for sustainable development. But let me start with the trends first. So in 2016, the universe of international investment agreements continued to grow. 37 new treaties were concluded, and that brought the total number of IIAs, of international investment agreements, to 3,324 treaties at the end of 2016. The most active country in terms of treaty making in 2016 was Turkey, with 7 treaties concluded during the year. And Turkey was followed by Canada, Morocco, and the United Arab Emirates. Not only the IIA system has continued to grow, but also the number of known treaty-based ISDS cases, this is investor-state dispute settlement cases, has continued to increase. In 2016, foreign investors have initiated 62 new known ISDS cases, which brought the total number to 767 cases. This number is lower than the number of cases initiated in 2015, but higher than the average between 2016 and 2015, which is around 49 cases per year. This increase in ISDS cases concerns many countries. So far, 109 countries have been respondents to one or more known ISDS claims. Countries' experiences with investor-state dispute settlement have highlighted that there is a pressing need for systematic reform of the global IIA regime. Today, the question is not anymore whether or not to reform, but today the question is about the what, how, and the extent of the reform. UNCTAD has picked up that gauntlet already in 2010, when we started engaging in advocacy for systemic and sustainable development-oriented reform of the IIA regime. UNCTAD's policy tools help policymakers, people like you, negotiating the treaties and designing policies at the national level. We help you design what we call new generation investment policies. These are policies that place inclusive growth and sustainable development at the heart of the efforts to attract and benefit from investment. Our first tool in this regard is UNCTAD's policy framework, investment policy framework for sustainable development. We developed it in 2012 and we relaunched it in 2015 in an updated version. The policy framework offers guidance and options for modernizing investment policies at the national and international level. So the policy framework is not only for negotiators of international investment agreements, but also for policymakers at the domestic level. Our second key policy tool was also launched in 2015, and that is UNCTAD's roadmap for IIA reform. The roadmap sets out 6 guidelines for reform, addresses 5 areas for reform, and provides options for actions at 4 levels of policy making, at the national, bilateral, regional, and at the multilateral level. What are the key areas of reform that we address in our roadmap? I said there is 5 of them. So the first one is safeguarding the right to regulate while providing protection to investors. The second one, and that's one very much in the public debate, is improving investment dispute settlement. The third area of reform in the roadmap is promoting and facilitating investment. The fourth is about ensuring responsible investment. And the fifth is about enhancing systemic consistency. That's about the relationship between the different treaties, between different IIAs, but also between investment treaties and other bodies of international law. Based on these 2 key policy toolkits, the policy framework and the roadmap for reform, we can say today that IIA reform has made significant progress. In fact, sustainable development-oriented treaty drafting has entered the mainstream of international investment policymaking. This is what we call the first phase of reform. That's when countries have built consensus on the need for reform, they have identified reform areas and approaches, they have reviewed the IIA networks, they have developed new model treaties, and they have started negotiating new, more modern, more sustainable development-oriented international investment agreements. Indeed, today, most of today's new treaties follow UNCTAD's roadmap for IIA reform. As you can see in some of the slides we are presenting, we show you the evidence of IIA reform. Many of the recent treaties contain elements that preserve the right to regulate while maintaining protection, that foster responsible investment, and that improve investment dispute settlement. Yet despite of all of this progress, much remains to be done. And it is mainly because comprehensive reform requires a two-pronged approach. First, formulating new, more modern, more sustainably oriented treaties. That's what we see already happening right now. But secondly, also modernizing the existing stock of old generation treaties. So policy attention today now really has to focus on what we call the phase 2 of IIA reform. That is the question about how to modernize the stock of outdated old generation treaties. And that, I'm very proud to say, is a special theme of this year's World Investment Report. I'm glad that we could ship some copies of the World Investment Report to New York, to your event, so that should allow you to pick it and also take it home for further reading and for inspiration. Let me tell you a little bit what we do in this year's World Investment Report, and particularly why this next phase of IIA reform is needed. We have identified 3 reasons why phase 2 of IIA reform is needed. First, because all treaties abound. More than 2,500 IIAs, or 95% of all treaties in force, were concluded before the year 2010. Second, because all treaties bite. Almost all of today's known ISDS cases are based on treaties that were concluded before the year 2010. And most of these treaties contain vague, outdated, broad formulations of the clauses. In fact, it is these broad and vague formulations of IIA clauses that have enabled investors to challenge domestic policy decisions, and they have also generated unanticipated and at times inconsistent arbitral interpretations of core IIA clauses. Let me also highlight the third reason why phase 2 of IIA reform is needed. That is because all treaties perpetuate inconsistencies. The continued existence of thousands of IIAs creates overlaps and fragmentation in treaty relationships, as well as interaction challenges both within the IIA regime, but also between the international investment treaties and other bodies of international law and other international investment policy making. Our 2017 World Investment Report responds to the need to modernize existing old generation IIAs. It does so by presenting and analyzing 10 policy options and their pros and cons, and these are policy options that states can adopt in line with their specific reform objectives and their specific development situation. These 10 policy options differ in several aspects. Some of the 10 policy options are more technical, for example, jointly interpreting or amending treaty provisions. Other of our policy options are more political. The option to engage multilaterally, for example, is a more political one. Then there are options that focus on procedure and options that also focus on content. Referencing global standards is one of the options that focuses on substance. Some of the options imply a continuous engagement with the IIA regime. These are, for example, amending, replacing, or engaging multilaterally. Some other options imply an exit from the IIA regime. Here we look at termination without replacement or at withdrawing from multilateral treaties. In our World Investment Report, we not only take stock of the pros and cons of the 10 options, but we also give initial examples of how they have been used by different countries. Determining which reform option is right for a country in a particular situation requires a careful and facts-based cost-benefit analysis. And you have to do that cost-benefit analysis while addressing a series of broader challenges. So there are challenges, there are strategic challenges, there are systemic challenges, and there are challenges relating to capacity or to coordination. All of that you can read more about in our World Investment Report. I am glad that I got an opportunity to flag the 10 options to you, and I hope that this short presentation inspires you to bring these 10 options back to your capital and to initiate a process of determining which of them might be useful for your country's particular situation and your country's particular objectives with respect to IRA reform. Finally, I would not want to miss an opportunity to flag some of our forthcoming events on international investment agreements. We have 2 events planned for autumn 2017. First of all, there is the global high-level annual IRA conference that will be taking place from the 9th to the 11th of October in Geneva in the Palais des Nations. And this year's annual IRA conference will deal with IRA reform. Particularly, it will also deal with phase 2 of IRA reform. That's what we just discussed in the context of our World Investment Report. So should you be interested in sharing your experiences, your country's experience on IRA reform, or also listen to other countries' experiences, to the thoughts of policymakers, academia, private sector on IRA reform, then please do join us in October in Geneva. We will be pleased to welcome you. Our second event is a regional event. That event is specifically focusing on transition economies, and it will take place in Baku in Azerbaijan on the 24th and the 25th of October 2017. Also, this event will focus on IRA reform. So I very much hope that I would get a chance to welcome you in one or the other event. And I'm very glad that I got a chance to present to you our World Investment Report. I think that courses like this you're having here in New York are really an essential building block and step towards promoting sustainable development-oriented IRA reform. And I'm very glad that UNCTAD and the Columbia Center for Sustainable Investment can cooperate in this regard. So with this, I wish you a very fruitful and inspiring continuation of the course, and I thank you for your attention to our presentation.